श्रीकांतो मातलो विसर्जनी सर्वमंगलाजन का शंकरो महादेव त्वं वंदे गजाननम विमलपटी कमलपुटी पुस्तक रुद्राक्षसस्तपुटी कामाक्षी पक्ष्मलाक्षी कल्तविपांची विभासी वारिंची मनोजवं मारुतुल्य वेगं जितेन्द्रियं बुद्धिमतां वरिष्ठं वातात्मजं वानृते मुख्यं श्रीरामदूतं शिरसा नमामि। शिवशक्त्या युक्तो यदि भवति शक्तप्रवृत्तं न चेदेवं देवो न खलु कुशलस्पन्दितुं व्यतस्त्वामाराध्यां हरिहरविरिञ्चादिभिरपि प्रणन्तुं स्तोतुं वा कदमकृतपुण्यप्रवृत्ति गुरुवे सर्वलोकानां विश्वे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां श्री दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ज्ञानानन्दमयं देवं निर्मलस्फटिकाकृतिमाधारं सर्वविद्यानां हैग्रीवमुपास्महे। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुविष्णु गुरुदेवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। मौनो व्याख्या प्रकटित परब्रह्म तत्त्वं युवानां वर्षिष्ठान्ते विसर्षगणयावृतं ब्रह्मनिष्ठे आचार्येन्द्रं करकलितचिन्मुद्रम् आनन्दरूपं स्वात्मा रामं मुतुवदं दक्षिणामूर्तिमीडे। Om Sree Maathre Namaha. So we have been discussing about the Lalitha Sahasranama, and I've been thinking on what is actually the most effective way to discuss the Lalitha Sahasranama. There are many books. Bhaskar Raya's Saubhagya Bhaskaram is the authoritative book on Lalitha Sahasranam that all of us will keep referring to as the magnum opus on Lalitha Sahasranam. Just to dive into it very briefly, when Jagadguru Adi Shankaracharya wanted to write the Bhashyam or the discourse for Lalitha Sahasranam, repeatedly he faced obstacles 3 times. Then he realized that the Divine Mother does not want him to write, and he went on to write the Vishnu Sahasranama Bhashyas, and he actually meditated on Mother on why he was facing obstacles. Then Mother revealed to him that in future, during Adi Shankaracharya's time in the 8th century AD, a great devotee will be born in the Mahabhagyanagaram, which is currently called the Hyderabad, and he will actually write the meaning for Lalitha Sahasranamas, and therefore Mother wanted to keep that opportunity for this great devotee to be born in the future. That great devotee is none other than Bhaskar Raya, who was born in the current day Hyderabad, which is very popularly known as Bhagyanagaram by the name of the Bhagyalakshmi temple that is in the old city of Hyderabad even today. It's a Mahalakshmi temple. Now, Saubhagya Bhaskaram is the magnum opus source through which we can refer for all the details. Now, in the current age and scenario, the better way of us understanding, if we can read Saubhagya Bhaskaram, there is no better source than it. As I was attempting to review, introspect, and meditate on the Divine Parent's feet, I kept asking what is actually a very direct way of understanding your namas or Mother. And today, in the last 1 week, I've been thinking through. Today, Mother was kind enough to flash that one of her names, AntharMukha SamaAaradhya, bahirMukha SuDurlabha, she herself revealed to the Vasinyadi Vagdevatas, Vasni Devi, Kameshwari Devi, Moni Devi, Vimala Devi, Arni Devi, Jaini Devi, Sarveshwari Devi, Kaurni Devi. Every opportunity you and I get, we should repeat their names because of their mercy, their karuna. You and I will be able to speak the names of Mother, and Nama, Mantra, Leelas of Mother will be allowed to come into our mind, heart, and the tongue with and only with the permission of the Vasinyadi Vagdevatas. So every opportunity you and I get, we should repeat their names. So AntharMukha SamaAaradhya, bahirMukha SuDurlabha, the one who is only experienced and understood internally, and the one who is never understood externally, is what that name briefly means. Taking that as a reference, I have promised to all of you that as I start discussing these namas to the extent Mother allows us to discuss, I'll also make an attempt to start documenting these Sahasranamas, the 1000, in order for us to, some of us understand, some of us are good at reading, some of us are good at listening, some of us are very good at watching the videos and following. So by documenting, like the Sri Devi Kadgamala series, we have documented it and have shared it with our group. Similarly, I will make an attempt to share these documents as and when they progress. And the structure that we'll be following to discuss is a brief Puranic context. And in between, I'll be discussing the Divya Leelas from the Puranas, like the Sri Krishna Kuchela story we discussed in the past. Today, we will make an attempt to understand the namas in this AntharMukhatvam, bahirMukhatvam, the external name and its meaning, iconography, what it means externally, which is generally superficial. But as we start diving into the AntharMukhatvam, the inner meaning of it, which will start sculpting us. Now, whether you touch fire knowingly or unknowingly, being fire will transform us permanently. Burn it. Fire can burn everything without any judgment or discrimination and turn it into ashes. Similarly, these names of Mother in Sri Vidya Sahasram, the three most powerful things are the Sri Chakram, the Panchadasi Mahamantram. If one does not have access to Panchadasi Mahamantram, she or he can chant the Lalita Trishati, 300 names of Mother, where each Bijakshara of the Panchadasi are expanded into 20 names. Therefore, chanting the Lalita Trishati is equivalent to chanting the Panchadasi Mahamantra. And the third one is the Lalitha Sahasranama, which basically talks about the Leelas of the Mother. Okay. Now, using that structure, we will basically discuss the Sree Mata Tattvam briefly when the Puranic story in Brahmanda Purana, essentially when Bandasura conquered the three worlds, Mother has to emerge out to recreate the world by the sacrificial oblations of the Devas, Devakara Samudyata, we have briefly discussed, right? In the bahirMukhatvam, it's very easy to understand. Sree Mata essentially is the Mother who is the creator, protector, sustainer of the whole universe, right? And now, in the next few names, we get the Chidagni Kunda Sambhuta. She manifested, that Mother manifested from the Chidagni Kunda. Okay, and Sree Mata, as we discussed in the previous class, Sree Mata, based on where you're splitting the Sree Mata name in the book, you'll also see a number followed by the name, which essentially says how many aksharas are there in that namam. Now, in AntharMukhatvam, when we are actually meditating in this namam, Sree Mata, Sree Mata, Sree Mata, it represents the primordial energy that is there in each of us as the Kundalini. Where is it? It is below the Muladhara in a pot called Kunda. Therefore, the feminine energy that rests in Kunda is called Kundalini, right? And the philosophical meaning of Sree Mata essentially is there is a triad in the Sree Mata, the source Mata. One, the knower, the one who wants to know, the means, manas, the means through which we know, and the one that needs to be known, the object that needs to be known. In this case, you and I are the matra or the knower, and the manas is basically the Ichcha Shakti that wants to know about Mother, and Mother is the one that essentially is the Meya. She is the one we want to know about. So these three Karanas, the three things, the one who wants to know, the process of knowing, and the one who needs to be known will become one. That is the AntharMukhatvam of Sree Mata. And the Mata, essentially, without our Mother, we don't exist, right? In Panchadasi Mantram, the first Bijakshara, which starts with Kadi Vidya Ka, essentially represents this Sree Mata Tattvam. Okay? Now, the easiest way to appeal the Mother is to first pray to Bhagwan Shiva with any stotra. That's the reason even the Saundarya Lahari, composed by Jagadguru Adi Shankaracharya, starts with Shiva Shaktya Yukto. The first word is Shiva. Now, the second one, the name Sri Maharagni, which essentially means the literal meaning, the great empress, the supreme sovereign queen, our mother. The brief Puranic story about the Maharagni as Mother emerged, the divine architect Vishwakarma, he, at the instruction of Brahma, constructed an imperial cosmic city that we actually know it as the Sripura, Srinagara, Sri Chakra. Now, with the 25 concentric fortresses, there are different layers that we discussed in Sri Devi Kadgamala Stotram, which basically are made with iron, bronze, gold, and some of the alloys with jewels. These are the representative of 3 states. And then in the central chamber, which is also called the Chintamani Gruha. Okay, Chintamani Gruha is our consciousness. These are all a representation of that macrocosm in our body, which is a microcosm, as we discussed in the Sri Devi Kadgamala Stotram. Okay. Now, in the Chintamani Gruha, the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, and Rudra, essentially have bowed down to Mother. Okay, we discussed in the Soundarya second slokam, Tani Amsum Pamsum Tavacharna Pankaro, Veranchis Sanchilam Vishad Lokanam Klan, Vatianam Sharikadam Sarsam, Haras Samshudenam, Basto Dolan with him. So the Trinity bowed down to you, Mother, and you are the Empress of the whole creation, placing the royal insignia, the emblem, and the universal administrative authority directly into Mother's hand. Okay, now what does this mean in the bahirMukha? This is a 5-lettered nama. It basically says Mother is seated crowned on an imperial throne, which is commanding the cosmic administrative forces of the Dikpalakas, Devas, and everyone, all the species, all the beings, right? The Supreme Empress, the Puranic context of this essentially is the one who rules the whole universe. Created in the first name is the Sree Mata. She is the one who is governing the absolute justice with the absolute authority. Sarva Tantra Swatantra. There is nobody above and beyond her. Okay. Now, when we are talking about rituals, we are doing Rajopacharas such as Chatram, Chamaram, we show umbrella to Mother. We show Chamaram, we do Nrityam, do the dances in the temples. Ganam, Gatram, sing the stutis, and the ceremonial crown is, Abhisheka, Pattabhisheka, we do. Mother is the one who actually has been administered, the chief administrator of the whole cosmos. In the AntharMukha, this is the bahirMukha. In the AntharMukha, she represents the consciousness that rules the Agya Chakra. That is the reason we have to keep the Sindoor on the Agya Chakra to say, one, it protects our intellect and consciousness. And in Sanatana Dharma, whoever keeps the Bottu or the Kunkuma or the Bindi, she or he says, I believe in the karma philosophy, therefore the rebirth philosophy. Therefore, whatever I'm doing now will continue to propagate through my next janmas, bringing me closer and closer to the one who created me. Okay. Now, the Vedantic philosophical meaning is the mother who essentially is Maharagni, is the one who is ruling the inward of my body and everything outward as well. When she's the one who's ruling inward and outward, why should I keep putting efforts to keep getting closer to her? Because there's a difference between the humans and the animals. The animals cannot speak. Humans have the intellect. For example, if you look at a lion or a tiger, the moment it is hungry, it will hunt and eat. Once it is full, even if there is a prey walking right in front of it, it will never attack. Whereas a human typically continues to stalk with greed. Even when they are full, they are constantly thinking, discriminating, judging, and trying to fill their treasures because of the fear of the unknown. They don't live in the present. When you start praying to Mother with Sri Maharagni, she will bring mindfulness to the fullest spectrum in us and therefore will make us live in the present. And that is a huge transformational thing rather than being too much in the past, being too anxious about the future. Okay. Now, the third name, Sree Mata, Sree Maharagni, Srimat Simhasan Eshwari. Now, the one who is sitting on the throne, the Trimurtis, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, actually have become the 3 legs of this sovereign ruler, on the very holy throne that Mother is sitting on. Now, on that Maheshwara is also becoming the 4th leg. Brahma, Vishnu or Janardana, Shiva or Rudra are the 3 legs, and Maheshwara, Shiva in the form of Maheshwara, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara. We never say Guru Devo Rudra, Guru Devo Shiva. Maheshwara is the one who does the Tirodhana, the concealment. Now, what happens is when we are basically talking about the gods, the Trinity, one is doing generation, the other one is doing the operations or the sustainment, the third one, Rudra, is doing the destruction. But in between these, amongst these three states, there is also somebody who is doing the Tirodhanam or concealment. When you're sitting in the puja and trying to focus, after some time, you will recall the hot cup of tea or coffee or food that you are supposed to have after the puja. So this Tirodhana tries to transition our state, which is we call as Maya. Okay, and on top of these four legs, which are a representation of Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, and Rudra, there is Sadashiva, the one eternal who becomes the plank. And on that top of that plank, the Srimat Simhasaneshwari, this Simhasana, which is unlike anything else in the cosmos, the mother goddess is sitting. This essentially is the brief Puranic story of it. Now, when the four, and these are called Pancha Brahmas. Okay, the Pancha Brahmas are Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, Rudra, and Sadashiva. Therefore, one of the names we'll get in future, Pancha Brahmasanasta, Pancha Pretasanasina. If mother does not sit on this throne, all these five, the Sadashiva, Maheshwara, Rudra, Vishnu, and Brahma, they will become Pancha Pretasanasina. They are dead bodies without mother, essentially representing that she is the Shakti, the Parashakti, that continues to bring them to the fore and ensure they are the ones who are continuing to perform the Pancha Brahmas role, the administrators of mother in the whole cosmos. Okay. Now in the AntharMukhatva, basically seated permanently in our Sahasra chakra, in the 1,000-petal lotus, in the crown chakra, where our individual consciousness emerges with the transcendental one. Now I'm being reminded, Albert Einstein actually said E is equal to mc square. Everything is in the form of time. What is a time? For example, if you were to think, when you are sitting in meditation and chanting Sree Maathre, SamaAaradhya, Srimat Simhasaneshwari, there will come a point where you will start becoming internalized. And you will sit silently and chanting Lalitha Sahasranama, but nobody will know that you're chanting Lalitha Sahasranama. When you start doing that, you will start going beyond space and time. What does space and time mean for us? Memories. Our memories are a representation of the time that has gone by. And our vision is a representation of the space that we are continuing to create. Okay, either with our devotion, our assumptions, or sometimes we tend to believe in something that we continue to see, which might be a pure creation of the Maya in us, our imagination. And when you and I are able to remove these visions, these illusions, and the memories, when you sit in silence and Sree Mata, Sree Maharagni, Srimat Simhasaneshwari, when you are chanting something, when you're doing something, if you are able to focus with your soul, heart, mind, and the vak, the speech that you are internally or externally chanting on the same thing, then you are actually meditating on mother. And that's essentially what it means by Srimat Simhasaneshwari. When she sits on the consciousness in the Sahasrara chakra, you and I will get the power to stay in the present, focusing on Sree Mata, Sree Maharagni, Srimat Simhasaneshwari. When we chant that name, we will see the Pancha Brahmas and that majestic mother as shown in the background, sitting and smiling, and you and I have our head gently touching the toes of the mother, therefore feeling extremely blessed and blissful. Okay, that is the internal meaning. Then Sree Mata, Sree Maharagni, Srimat Simhasaneshwari, Chidagni Kunda Sambhuta Devakarya Samudhyata. Fourth one is Chidagni Kunda Sambhuta, which is an 8-lettered name. Literal meaning is born from the sacrificial fire of the pit of pure consciousness. But how does that help you and me? Okay. The brief Puranic story when Manmada was burned down by Shiva, okay, from which the Bandasura was recreated by one of, we discussed this story, right? Then the Devas actually have performed a super yagna, super sacrificial fire called the Mukha SamaAaradhya. And in that Mukha SamaAaradhya, when they offered their limbs, they cut their limbs and offered in that homa. What does it mean? Shiva asked the Devas to offer their limbs because one, they can grow back their limbs and there is no pain for them. Essentially, when we are meditating or chanting on Mother, you should sacrifice your thought, consciousness, awareness from other things and focus only on Mother. That's what Chidagni Kunda Sambhuta essentially means externally. Okay? And when you are talking of Chidagni Kunda Sambhuta, you're talking about externally something that is radiating, resplendent, is emerging out of the Homakunda from those divine fires. Okay? When the gods performed the great cosmic fire, we discussed this was done near Mount Kailash, right? And whenever we are doing the physical homas, which we keep discussing, one has to perform Nitya Agnihotra. If one cannot do Nitya homas, at least she or he has to do 100 homas or get 100 homas done. The AntharMukhatva of this essentially is the fire in us called Kundalini that being awakened in the Muladhara and therefore incinerating past or karmic impressions in order to burn our samskaras, vasanas, and therefore rising through the Sushumna Nadi, Chidagni Kunda Sambhuta. What it does if you're chanting Chidagni Kunda Sambhuta, the Sushumna Nadi gets sodhana, gets basically cleansed internally and externally. And then when we are talking about Vedantic and philosophical meaning, Chit, Chidagni, Chit means pure awareness. Our pure awareness is the sacrificial pit in which we are offering the thought of the Mother, thought or the chant of the name and repetition of the mantra. When we are essentially stirring it like you keep stirring the milk with a stirrer and butter emerges. When you and I are stirring our chit, the pure awareness with the thoughts, leelas, namas, and mantras of Mother, she will start emerging out unconditionally. And then that fire starts transforming to Jnanagni. Okay? Chidagni Kunda Sambhuta Devakarya Samudyata. The one who is emerging out to do the divine mission, okay, dedicated to fulfilling the divine mission. Now, in every age, whether it is Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga, you will have the evil forces that are trying to win over the divine forces. Doesn't matter which yuga it is, okay? When we take shelter at the divine feet of whatever our Ishtadeva, she or he will ensure that we are doing good deeds and therefore making us an instrument for the Devakarya Samudyata. Okay, just like Mother had a single-minded purpose to win over Bandasura by annihilating him, his Shunyaka and therefore re-establishing the Devatas and the Dharmika Karikramas. The Sanatana Dharma had to be restored. Now, Chidagni Kunda Sambhuta, Devakarya Samudyata, holding the Mother's divine weaponry. What are the divine weaponry? The 5 floral arrows on the lower right hand, the Ikshukodanda, the sugarcane bow in the left and low hand, and then Chidagni Kunda Sambhuta, Devakarya Samudyata. Right, then we have the noose and the gourd respectively in the upper hands that Mother is holding. Now, when you are focusing on the AntharMukhatvam on this, how will you focus and how will you think? The Kundalini, essentially, Devakarya Samudyata, as it starts ascending, it starts filling us with empathy. We start seeing connectivity with us, with all the beings, no matter how they look, appear, what language they speak. We start becoming more empathetic towards others, right? And the Kundalini, as it starts becoming active, it will make us do extremely empathetic Kriya deeds. The Kriya Shakti in us will help others with whatever you and I are blessed with. You are blessed with extra material, you will start donating those to the needy. You are blessed with extra money, you will start donating to the needy. And this Devakarya Samudyata is what will prepare us to untie the knots, the Brahma Grandhi, Vishnu Grandhi, Rudra Grandhi. When it comes, we'll talk about it. To liberate the practitioners' obstacles that continue to block the Kundalini. Okay? Now, the Devas essentially are the good thoughts, good deeds. The Asuras are essentially the ignorance, the laziness, and the Tamo guna and the Rajo guna in us, agitation, restless agitation on things, right? Mindless consumption of there is a short form video or something that we continue to do to waste time without really putting it to productive use, because our time is being consumed by asuras that are kind of taking the help of Maya. Now, Maya is a representation. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Maya Rupena Samstha Namastasya 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 Namo Namaha. Mother essentially as Maya, as long as we don't realize that she is the same Maya that can unveil the curtain on the Maya and therefore reveal the Shiva to us. That is the reason she is sitting on top of Sadashiva on the throne. When she unveils the mask, the curtain, she will reveal the permanent eternal truth, the Sada Shiva, the only truth that you and I need to know. The one truth if you and I know, nothing else will be unknown to us anymore. Then the fifth name, Udyat Bhanu Sahasrava. When Mother actually started rising, we discussed 1,000 suns or infinite suns, the brilliance of 1,000 rising suns was experienced. Now, in the bahirMukhatvam, when you are basically watching Mother's complexion glow, the dazzling auspiciousness, radiant, Aruna Varna, and that essentially is a representation of the infinite or 1,000 suns, right, that are rising in the east. Now, the AntharMukhatvam of this essentially is the brilliant flash of light that happens in the Anahata Chakra. Okay, when the divine enters, a lot of people have different experiences. Some experience it as numbing experience, some experience it as tearing up, some experience a divine bliss and calmness in their whole presence, right? In their heart, the Anahata Chakra and the Agya Chakras, where they continue to meditate, and even the flash of lightning pauses for them. There's a reason you see, whenever you see some Maha Avatar Babaji, Sri Guru Babaji's pictures, you will see him with a flash of lightning, where even the lightning pauses. Okay, that essentially is what we are talking about, the Udyat Bhanu Sahasrava. Now, Chaturbahu Samanvita, the one with the 4 hands. It's another 8-letter name that we are discussing. And the Chaturbahu Samanvita essentially means the one who is with the 4 hands. We discussed in the last class, Mother is holding the divine arms. In those 4 divine arms, Mother essentially is holding the 5 floral arrows, the Ikshukodanda, and Manorupe Ikshukodanda, Panchatanmatra Sayaka. So she is holding the Panchabanas, Ikshukodanda, Ankusha, which is, I think Ankusha is the gourd, and then the Pasha. Okay, and this Pasha is the noose. This is essentially the bahirMukhatvam. When we are looking at Mother and her 4 hands, our willpower will continue to grow. We will be able to do pratyahara, we'll be able to withdraw the distractions, reduce the distractions in our life, and increase the concentration and start focusing on going inward rather than being outward, right? And in the AntharMukhatvam, this represents the Chaturbahu Samanvita. As we are looking at Mother, our internal willpower, therefore our focus, our attention, our stability are going to increase. And this essentially gives the Antakarna Chatushtaya. What does it essentially mean? The fourfold inner instruments: mind or the manas, buddhi or the intellect, chitta or the memory, and then ahankara or the ego. I'm being reminded of a brief story. Guruji used to scold whenever I would not do something. This was Devra Babaji's ashram or the lineage. And every time Guruji would scold me, the ego would reduce. That represents a true love. When somebody scolds you or shoos you away, but you still stick to them, you are rising above your ego and keeping your ego aside. Guruji would always tell us that when I scold you, two things will happen. Either you sacrifice your ego and start giving me, the Guru, a bigger seat, or you sacrifice your Guru by giving your ego a bigger seat. We can only accept either the Guru or the ego. Who is a Guru? Like Dattatreya made 24 Gurus. So foam was a Guru. A prostitute was a Guru. A butterfly was a Guru to Dattatreya. Guru is essentially a concept. Every person I meet is some or other way superior to me. And that alone I learn of her or him is essentially a guru. There are Nishiddha gurus. There are some people from whom we learn how not to be. Okay, even they are teaching us something on how not to be. Now the eighth name is Ragaswarupa Pashadya. Ragaswarupa Pashadya essentially means holding the noose, Pasha, which is an embodiment of love and attachment. Raga Swarupa Pashadya is another 8-letter name. When the the story that I'm being reminded of very briefly is, we will discuss this in the future as well. Ashwaruda Devi, was manifested from mother's nodes, and there is a temple in Varanasi for Ashwaruda Devi, which opens only once a year. When the divine armies and the demonic armies of Bandasura clashed, right? The dark illusion of the demonic generals was being scattered by the Shakti's warriors. What do demonic forces do? They try to make us ignorant. They try to make us very judgmental. They try to make us lazy. What does the divine armies do? Make hay while the sun shines. Make the best use of time. Get rid of laziness. Continue to be productive and make the right use of time, because time is consuming. Kalo Jagat Bhakshakaha. And Ashwaruda Devi, from mother's noose and goad, Ashwaruda Devi, and riding the celestial horse, Ashwaruda Devi's horse name is Aparajita, right? She emerged, and she's the one who actually controls our mind. When in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagwan Shri Krishna sits on the chariot as the charioteer, he's controlling the 6 horses, which are the Kama, Krodha, Mada, Matsarya, Lobha, Moha sinas. As long as we keep controlling those, they will become our worst enemies. But the moment we bring a guru or a divine in that seat to control those horses, our body becomes the divine chariot in which Paramatma Krishna will start ruling. And on the flag is the Kapi Paramatma Anjaneya. The thoughts which become the monkeys in our mind will transform to the divine Hanuman, who will discover the Parashakti in us. And that process of discovering the Parashakti by Anjaneya is nothing but the Sundara Kanda in Ramayana. Okay. In the bahirMukhatva, the Ragaswarupa Pashadya essentially means held in her lower left hand. Right? Is it the lower left hand? Pasha is, mother is holding the Pasha in the upper left hand. Okay. A radiant, blinding golden ruby essentially is what is being held. Right? And that's essentially the bahirMukhatvam. In the AntharMukhatvam, mother actually represents the Ichcha Shakti, where she is able to control us. Yeah. And therefore, we are able to control it. Shakti Ayukto Yadibhauta Shakti Prabhutam Nachedevam Devo Nakalu Kushla Spanditum Vata SamaAaradhyam Harihara Virinjadi Vipre Pranantum Stotum Vakadam Krit Punya Pravati. Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. My apologies, I had to rush through because somebody was ringing the bell incessantly. And Daivam Manushrupena, you never know. Divine always comes in the human form. So Therefore, I had to rush through the previous recording, and I'm resuming back on the 8th name now, the Ragaswarupa Pashadya, right? The 8-letter name. In AntharMukhatvam, Raga essentially represents in Kundalini, this Nama represents the Ichcha Shakti, the power of the divine will, desire, that continues to bind the mind away from the peripheral world or the worldly distraction and harnesses into our central channel, Sushumna. When we are talking about you want to get rid of your attachments, keeps talking about Ragaswarupa Pashadya, Ragaswarupa Pashadya, Ragaswarupa Pashadya. Just like the way you have to tie a rope is you take a stick and you tie the rope clockwise as you're doing it. When you take the rope, how do you open the rope? You have to go anti-clockwise. When you are doing Ragaswarupa Pashadya, Ragaswarupa Pashadya, Ragaswarupa Pashadya, the attachments, the distractions that are deep grained in our mind, vasanas, chitta, will be unscrewed and it will be untied. That's exactly what happens. And once that happens, the Sushumna Nadi becomes extremely clean. It does not have any more blocks, burdens, and therefore our Sushumna becomes the highway through which the Kundalini can progress much faster. That is the 8th name's AntharMukha, the AntharMukhatva or the internal or inner meaning of Ragaswarupa Pashadya. The next name is Krodhakarang Kushojvala. All of us experience this. The literal meaning is the shining with the elephant goad, right? Ankusha, which is an embodiment of aversion and control. Krodhakarang Kushojvala. So, Krodhakarang Kushojvala. So, the anger is basically represented by the goad, the Ankusha. And the anger continues to poke every one of us to do things that we don't want to do, to say things that we never meant to say. The moment we start chanting this name, Krodhankarang Kushojvala, this is personally, it has helped me reduce my anger significantly. And people who know me very, very closely through my formative years know how the anger gradually walked out of my life. And this name played a massive role. Krodhakarang Kushojvala. I did not know the names back then, but I would look at mother's picture and visually close, and I will get the picture that you are seeing in the background constantly by thinking of all the things that are there in mother's hand. And I've been constantly thinking about the Ankusha also, and it started putting a check to my anger. Okay. Now, when Bandasura dispatched the furious raging elephants in the war against the divine armies, Bandasura's army of the elephants was being led by a demon called Durmada. Okay, and his job was to crush the Sree armies, the armies of the mother. Then this was the time where Durmada actually took very, very aggressive elephants that were trying to toss away the divine armies. Mother took her Ankusha and she struck that Ankusha. And from that Ankusha, a blazing lightning came out. And from that Ankusha, the Sampatkari Devi, who was mounted on a divine elephant, and the divine elephant's name is Ranakolahala. I have done a couple of episodes on Ashwarudha Devi and Ranakolahala. You can go back to the YouTube videos and see. I'll try to find those and post it so you can watch those as well. And the power of the goad essentially was transferred to Ranakolahala and the Sampatkari Devi. Sampatkari Devi sitting on the Ranakolahala, led the divine armed forces of Mother's elephant forces, and it crushed the Durmada's army of elephants. What this basically says is, whenever you're looking at the goad of the mother in the mother's hand, she will crush the Durmada, the unwanted arrogance and ego in us. Look at some people, they always feel that, because of their good looks, they'll have arrogance. Look at some people, because of the material riches, they'll have arrogance. Because of whatever they have, they'll have arrogance. Okay? I know a case of an IAS officer in India. She used to be an extreme, very blessed, very merited, and got a very high rank. She was the IAS officer of one of the towns where I lived for some time. And the lady is blessed without a doubt, and the capabilities, administration. Now, with power comes responsibility, the very famous dialogue of the Spider-Man movie. But this IAS officer put her power to abuse and started becoming extremely corrupt. And in due course, the time dharma kicked in to make her absolutely stand in the box of law and the justice and live through her karma. She's still living through her karma. I know of another case, a very, very materialistically rich people who grew from rags to riches through their businesses. And this lady used to be very arrogant of her good looks, fair skin, very pretty looking face. And in the process of flow of time, an accident happened where her face had to be operated on about 30 times to restore her face. Today, that mother, her face, when anybody looks at her face, they cannot recognize her. Her face has been completely burned down by a chemical attack, and she lost the prettiness. There are many, many such examples, that each of you will be able to recall. Now, the mada, which leads us to Durmada, is what we'll be able to get rid of and therefore start being very humble and empathy filled. This is essentially the inner meaning on how looking at mother's goad will externally control our anger and take it away, but internally how she will make us filled with empathy, gratefulness, and attitude of gratitude. Okay? And the Kundalini essentially will start getting the Jnana Shakti, Ichha Shakti, Kriya Shakti, Jnana Shakti, right? The power of discerning on what is right for me, what is wrong for me, the Naiti philosophy. Rather than trying to read every book that we come across, rather than trying to read every representation, you would follow your focused time on meditating on mother's names or trying to reflect on mother's names and therefore trying to Chidagni Kunda Sambhuta. Where is the Chidagni? Oh, the Agni is there in my consciousness. If I am trying to lighten up that lamp in my body, Nana Chidragadodharastita Mahadeepa Pravabhaswaram. So that Chidagni Kunda in my body needs to be lit up. When it is lit up, I will start getting access to that knowledge that is not documented in any book, that has never been captured by anyone. It has only been experienced by the great devotees who have experienced it in their meditative and trance state of divine ecstasy. And that omnipresent superconsciousness that is all pervading can only be accessed when we clean our awareness and start tuning into that frequency, where that frequency will only be available and accessible once we are internally in a state of calm and no wave or storm can bother us. Therefore, we'll be able to tune into that state of bliss, the channel of bliss. Right. Okay. And that is essentially the yogic and kundalinic representation, where the sharp strike of discrimination will be able to curb the wildness, uncontrolled senses. Indriyas will start getting controlled, and therefore our Sukshma and Karana Sariras will start aligning to the Devakara Kramas that we are trying to do as well. There'll be no internal conflict. There'll be an absolute peace. Mano Rupekshu Kodanda. The literal meaning is holding the sugarcane bow. This is also an 8-letter word. Holding the sugarcane bow, which is an embodiment of the mind, representation of the mind. Now, when the gods presented Mother with a bow carved out from the fresh sugarcane, right? And it was strung with a row of buzzing bees, honeybees. Okay. And Mother twanged, she gently pulled the sweet bowstring, the tankara of the bow, the primordial reverberation that came in the entire cosmos, right? What did it do? Generated the armies of Raja Matangi Devi, proving that mere divine resolve of Mother and her mental focus can vanquish the brute forces of the demon. What does this mean? When we continue to keep saying Manorupekshu Kodanda, Manorupekshu Kodanda, Manorupekshu Kodanda, or keep looking at the sugarcane bow, it continues to calm down our consciousness and therefore enhance the Raja Matangi Devi, who is the Neela Saraswati as well. She is the minister of Lalita Maha Tripur Sundari. And when that happens, she will provide us access to that very Rahasya Nama meaning and the Jnana that will reveal the Lalita Tripura Sundari. Okay? When we are looking at the sugarcane bow, our manas, our chitta will start becoming, our will start becoming extremely calm. Our willpower will go up and we will start aligning towards the divine. Now that is a brief meaning of the bahirMukhatvam held in a lower left hand, right? A sugarcane bow with a green stalk. And the bees generally don't appear in any idol. That basically is hidden behind the sugarcane bow, right? Symbolizing the sweetness of the sugarcane, where the honeybees are coming to feed on the nectar or the sweetness of the sugarcane bow. Now, when you and I continue to pray to Mother, the devotees of Mother, Manu, Lopamudra Devi, Agastya, Chandra, Ishvara, and the Durvasa, the Tatreya, all of them become the honeybees who will come to extract the nectar that our will is now producing by constantly thinking of Mother. And those divine honeybees that will become our gurus will reveal the mantras, will reveal the paddhati, will reveal the process, will reveal the steps on how we can progress. Some of you, when you continue to chant the Lalita Trishati, Devi Kadgamala Stotram, or Sahasranamas, or mantras, or namas of Mother, you will start getting instructions in your dream on what you are supposed to do. That is a clear representation that one of the gurus has the bees around the sugarcane bow of Mother, has basically made your heart a cave of their residence, because you're constantly chanting Mother's name, Leelas, and therefore bringing in the access to the very secretive Sri Vidya. That's what it means. And once it comes through, you get access to the Paddhati or the steps or the process. Ascension of the Kundalini is a natural byproduct. Okay, that's what the inner meaning of that Nama means. Pancha Tanmatra Sahayaka is the 11th one, holding the 5 arrows, which basically represent the 5 subtle elements of perception. Right? When we basically discussed the Devi Khadgamala, we discussed that the different flowers that mother was holding, right? The 5 floral arrows that mother was holding, we discussed. And those Chuta flower or the mango, Mallika, Jasmine, Nilotpala, right? And the 2 others, some similar to lotus, water lily, and Raktoshaka essentially is what the 5th one is, right? I mean, we have listed those 5 names in the Devi Khadgamala Stotram story and the book that we have given. And the sweet pollen that of these flowers and these floral arrows, right, are enchanting and distracting the enemies and our own distractions. That's essentially what the Panchatanmatra Sahayaka Puranic story essentially means from the Brahmanda Purana. When the demonic forces tried distracting the Sree armies or the divine armies, the pollen from the flowers, the fragrance from the flowers, re-energized the divine armies by a significant force, therefore restoring one, the enthusiasm in the divine armies to go and fight back. 2, they got infinite energy from the weakness that they were in, the laziness that they were in. They got enthusiasm. With that enthusiasm, Manojovam Martulya Vegam Jitendriyam Buddhimatam Vrishtam Vatatmajam Vanruyuta Mukyam Sree Ramadutam Sirsa Navami. Like Manojavam, like Hanumanji, they became extremely energetic, enthusiastic, and started jumping back again. Okay. Now, holding in our upper, where are, Mano Rupeksha Kodanda Panchatanmatra Sahayaka, the 5 floral arrows mother is holding in her lower right hand. Ashoka, the mango chuta flower, jasmine, blue lily, right, Nilotpala, and lotus. These are the precise arrows that are their mother has taken from Kamadeva, her great devotee, whose Panchadashakshari is what we are using now, Kadividya. And these 5 floral arrows can overpower the external senses that can be ego-driven. Okay, this is what the external meaning means, bahirMukha. The AntharMukha Nama essentially means the 5 subtle elements of the 5 Tanmatras. What are they? Shabda, sound being heard by the ears. Sparsha, touch being felt by the skin. Rupa, being seen by the eyes. Then taste being seen by the tongue, and smell being felt by the nose. Gandha, Rupa, Rasa, Sparsha, and Shabda. Right? These are the 5 Tanmatras that we have, which are corresponding to the subtle centers from Mooladhara to the Vishuddhi Chakra. Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata, and Vishuddhi are each a representation of one of these Tanmatras. We'll discuss about it when we discuss Mahashakti Kundalini. Okay. Now, this name also represents the power of action of Kriya Shakti, contributing to the Kriya Shakti. The sensory perceptions, the moment you look at something, you taste something, you smell something, immediately you have a call to action on it, right? Which basically pulls our awareness into a state of duality. The bahirMukhatva happens. And here, when we are chanting this name from, you smell a divine floral fragrance. You open and see what flower is there. But as you progress through, when you smell it, you know that divine fragrance is coming from the flowers that are ornating on mother's body or her hair. Okay, and it cannot be seen by the external eye. It can be only experienced by the Jnana Netram or the internal eye. Okay, and there are some bijakshas that are connected to these 5 floral arrows, not really required for us. But as we discussed in the Sri Yantra, there are those bijakshas that we got briefly discussed. The beauty of the Sanatana Dharma is we don't really need to have access to the bijakshas when we chant the namas. the mantras, some of the bijaksharas or all the bijaksharas are actually encapsulated. And therefore, it gives us the same result as chanting the bija mantras or bijaksharas. Okay, that is the 11th nama, I think. And the 12th one is Nijaruna Prabhapura Madhyat Brahmanda Mandala. In the last class, we have discussed until here, but I visited all of these in this AntharMukha and bahirMukha, external and internal. Right, the literal translation of Nijaruna Prabhapura Madhyat Brahmanda Mandala, which is a 16-letter nama, is the mother whose natural overflowing rosy saffron radiance is filling the multitude of cosmos of the universe. The whole universe is submerged in her red hue, essentially meaning she is the Maharagni, the second name, Srimad Simhasaneshwari. She is the whole ruler of the cosmos, that Sree Mata. Okay. And in the Brahmanda Purana, there's a brief story that talks about this. As Mother Lalita Mahatripur Sundari prepared her Radha, the Sri Chakra Raja, right, the crimson aura expanded outwards into the whole cosmos. The Brahmandas, the macro egg, okay, macrocosmic egg, Brahma plus Anda, okay, floating in that ocean of space, appeared to the gods as tiny crimson bubbles that are floating in the deep red rose-tinted waters of mother's complexion. As her rhythm started moving forward, reassuring the whole universe that her all-encompassing protection is all ubiquitously spread, and therefore she will restore the cosmos from the clutches of Bandasura, who actually started challenging the creation aspect itself, therefore attacking the roots of Sanatana Dharma. Because he started challenging the creation process, people couldn't have kids anymore. Because we discussed the Nirasa story where he removed the reproductive fluids from everyone. And because people did not have energy, rasas have been removed, the people stopped doing all Sanatana Dharma Karikramas, which will feed the divine and therefore strengthen the Sanatana Dharma, therefore attacking the very foundation of Sanatana Dharma itself. Now, in the bahirMukhatvam, Nijaruna Prabhapura Madhyat Brahmanda Mandala essentially means whatever we just discussed, bathed in that infinite pool of red aura of soft dawn red light that emerges out from mother's body, right? So expansive that all the galaxies, celestial realms, and the physical cosmos just float in that as specks of dust will float in the air when you are in an air-conditioned room or sitting in a room where the sunlight is coming through. You see small dust particles, colloidal dust is floating in. Similarly, in the whole cosmos, the planets, all the planets, all the cosmos, all the universes started appearing like specks of dust in front of mother. That is the bahirMukhatva or external meaning. The AntharMukhatva meaning essentially is when the Kundalini Shakti starts rising, the Kundalini Shakti will have a crimson red hue that will start filling the whole macrocosm of the body of the individual, bathing all the nadis of the body, Sudha Sagara. And in that Sudha Sagara, all are 72,000 Naga. Sudha Sarabi Varshini, the 72,000 nadis of the body will start taking bathing or start taking a bath in those red light, which starts making a transformative change in you and me, right? By bringing the divine prana to the nerve plexus. The granthis will be unknotted. Rudra Granthi Vibhedini, Vishnu Granthi Vibhedini, Brahma Granthi Vibhedini will be, those are the three namas that we'll get in the reverse order. Brahma Granthi Vibhedini, Vishnu Granthi Vibhedini, Rudra Granthi Vibhedini. The nerve plexus will start getting charged with the divine energy, the Kundalini, which is very much there in our body as the prana, right? And the all-pervading nature of the Brahma will be experienced by the one individual who experiences this name inward as well. Okay. That's the brief attempt at that Nama, AntharMukha, not AntharMukha, Nijaronu Prabhapuram Adhyat Brahmanda Mandala. Then Champaka Ashoka Punnaga Saugandikala Satkacha, another 16-letter name, the 13th name, which essentially talks about the lustrous dark hair of mother is adorned by the Champaka, Ashoka, Punnaga, Saugandika flowers. I'm being reminded of the Soundarya Slokam. Dhuno Dudvantam Nasturita Dalitendi Varvanam Ganastikdaslaksham Chigrunakurambam Tavashive. Yadiyam Saurabhyam Sahajam Uplabdam Samanaso Vasantyasmin Manye Valavadnavati Vitapinam. The thick matted hair of mother, which has a divine scent that is spreading the whole cosmos. All the devotees who meditate on her continue to feel, continue to enjoy the divine fragrance that comes from mother's hair. And these flowers, the fragrant Champaka, Ashoka, Punnaga, Saugandika, which are already fragrant, are becoming more fragrant because they now have a place in mother's dark, beautiful, lustrous hair. Okay. Now, the bahirMukhatva of this essentially Nama talks about the mother's hair is something that one will not be able to see by going. No temple will allow you to go back of the idol in the sacrosanct. So you'll never be able to see the hair of the Divyamurti. If you need to visualize the hair, you have to visualize in your meditation. When you are meditating on mother's hair, what happens essentially is your ignorance will be completely washed. That's the sloka I chanted. Dhuno Dudvantam Nastulita Daltendi Varam. Jagadguru starts with Palashruti. The ignorance will be dispelled, the one who actually meditates on mother's hair. Okay? And then who essentially her hair, when in the Brahmanda Purana, the armies of Bandasura were creating the dark clouds of mesmerizing, distraction, and weakening forces on the divine army. Mother just brought her hair, matted hair to the front, which dispelled the whole darkness and revived the divine armies. Okay, the celestial Gandharvas and the Yakshinis and others actually gathered these 4 flowers from the Mount Meru and brought them to mother to adorn or to ornate her hair. When she kept it in hair, those flowers thanked the Yakshinis, the Gandharva women, and the Apsaras, because they got a seat in mother's hair now because of these divine women who are actually serving the mother. Okay. And the heavenly bees started hovering in reverence around those. People thought they were hovering around the flowers, but they were hovering around the hair of the mother, which had a sweeter smell than the flowers and their nectar. And therefore, those bees were doing a musical hum around mother. And the yogis who focused on it and heard it as Om. Om. That became the Brahmari Nadam. Okay. Now, the mother's hair can be visualized in our meditation, or some of the Divya Murtis will have the braided hair to the front, where you can look at that beautiful black matted hair, which will dispel our darkness. That is the bahirMukhatvam. The dark hair represents the vast, unmanifest void. The avyakta prakriti, the unmanifested void in the cosmos. Remember, we spoke briefly about the black hole, which continues to absorb all the light that goes in. That darkness is mother's hair, which can swallow anything and everything. What about our ignorance? It's less than, if the cosmos themselves are tiny specks for Mother, what are you and I? And therefore, what is your ignorance and my ignorance? All she needs is absolute honest devotion and total surrender, Sharanagati, where she can continue to bring the knowledge to the fore and removing the ignorance. Okay? The vasanas will basically be transformed into divya gunas when we continue to focus on Champaka Ashoka Punnaga Saugandhika Lasatkacha. We will stop here and resume back in the next class. Mangalam Guru Shri Chandramaulishwarage Shakti Ganapati Sharadambige Shankaracharya Nige Kala Bhairavage Kali Durgige Veeradhira Sura Hanuma Maruti Charanage. Mangalam Guru Shri. Stay blessed. Sree Maathre Namaha.